much more a storyteller. But of course, I've also had this interest in puppetry. I hung around puppet theaters and watched all the secrets to steal them, probably. But I never really managed to play much on stage with puppets. And then I left Czechoslovakia, and I came here in 1979. And I worked as a messenger and a cab driver and a techie and in construction, all kinds of jobs. And then I was touring with this black-light theaters, so I didn't have much time for puppetry, but I kept doing storytelling. And finally, I found those puppets at Jan Hus Church, and I found Jan to work with me on them, and it just all came together in Faust on a puppet stage.
Who permitted you to enthrone your a posteriore on my master's table?
Buffoon, I did.
That I discern that you did.
Bravo, this is an exemplary throne for my a posteriori.
Hey, you oaf! Who permitted you to enthrone your a posteriori on my master's table?
Buffoon, I did.
That I discern that you did. But I transmit you such counsel that you remove yourself of that book before...
From the book.
Huh?
It doesn't matter, but from that book.
But I transmit you such counsel that you remove from that book
Yourself.
I will count to 3. And when I...
One day
back,
Vitek
I
called
want
me
you
up,
off that book.
and he said there is a little discovery to be made. In Jan Hus Church on 74th Street and 1st Avenue, Manhattan, which is actually old Czechoslovakian church. And I was totally amazed what he showed me, because what we found was about 50 beautifully carved, 100 years old puppets. And we were allowed to work on them. And meanwhile, Vitek translated this old comedy, Johannes Dokchtor Faust, to English. And, well, the puppets are not really done yet. It's a really difficult job, and we have many of them. And although we've been working for about a year and a half, some of them are still missing legs or arms. They need some painting job. Some of them need total overhaul or absolute restoration.
There are no records about the puppet theater at Jan Hus Church. Actually, all the records for about 20 years were stolen, including the records of birth. But when I kept asking around, one by one, I found people who saw puppet theater in their childhood.
Well, when we were children, we used to go down to Jan Hus when Reverend Vincent Bisek was the pastor down there. He put on shows with puppets, which my father participated in. My father was really handy that way. He could fix it up. He was a shoemaker by trade, and when I mean shoemaker, he made the whole shoe. He didn't repair shoes, and so he was very gifted, but he inherited his talent from his grandfather, who had puppets of his own in Czechoslovakia. And he always remembered those puppets, and that's why he got interested down Jan Hus, and he played with those down there, and eventually he made some of his own, but he did make them, and he did produce them. My mother helped my father repair the ones down church and dress them up and bring them into up to date as of that time. What they are now, I don't know.
The origins of the Czech puppet theater are really hard to trace, and there are no written accounts and no plays recorded. And whatever exists in the lore of the puppeteering family is part invention, so it's To start a puppet theater, it was really a considerable investment. Old puppeteers usually wouldn't make their own puppets, and they were well-known carvers who they would order these puppets from. They actually are records of price lists that would list like a leg or arm for a puppet, a head with a movable jaw, a head with movable eyes, different prices according to the size of the puppets. Doesn't have a jaw, but he has these wonderfully articulated arms. Look at that, look at that.
Oh.
Look at that. Well, that's a little problem, actually, all this articulation, because sometimes it runs away from you. So people keep asking, why does he have this hoof? Somehow it didn't make it here that every devil has a hoof on one foot, and that's how he's recognized when he's dressed. I've never, as a kid, I didn't know naked devils, that they were always dressed as people. This is his coat. Mm-hmm. He goes around dressed as a forest warden or a game warden, right? Or as a hunter or something like that, and then when he tricks people, he just turns around and there's his devilish coat.
They're old and rusty, so I think we will have to...
The puppet family usually would have a set of about 20 puppets that would have to play all the characters in all the plays that they did. Then they would own these sets, which would be some kind of a portable puppet stage, and backdrops. 4 backdrops was a usual setup, and that would have to be enough for everything they would ever do.
Salutations to the most illustrious auditorium.
So I kept thinking about doing a puppet show, and it was immediately clear that the play we would have to do would be Faust. That was the most important play in the repertoire of the Czech Puppet Theatre.